There is only one accurate predictor of financial success. And no, it's not actually having an amazing idea. It's not fancy business tactics or even hard work, actually. It comes down to one thing, which is what habits do you have? Habits are literally the only thing that can make financial success inevitable. Just under 50% of our daily actions are performed automatically. Some of those make you poor, some make you rich. By the end of this video, you will walk away with the most common habits of the rich, all backed by data to help you too become part of the top 1%. In fact, I didn't know this, but did you know that on average, it takes about 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic? But before we get into that, hit the subscribe button because we have big videos coming up I don't want you guys to miss. Habit number 1, negotiate daily. Listen, Americans are awful at this. Middle Easterners, actually really good. But you need to negotiate the price of something almost every day. It's a muscle that you need to build. So the wild thing is, every billionaire I've ever met, they've had this one thing in common. They negotiate just about anything that they can, especially the stuff that they buy. Let me give you an example. I have a friend, Noah Kagan, so this is Noah, and he makes $85 million a year in his company, AppSumo. Big company, right? Noah also has had this company doing somewhere between, let's call it $1 million to $85 million for more than 11 years. So he's had a long time making a lot of money. What's fascinating about Noah is if you've ever met him, he negotiates more than anybody else I've ever met. He negotiates his coffee almost every day. So if you're with Noah and you go to Starbucks, it's the weirdest thing you've ever seen in your life.
In the order I could get 10% off.
But those tiny things of him asking for coffee every day means that now he negotiates multi-million-dollar SaaS contracts and is probably why he is worth 9 figures plus. Steal his homework. And the data is there to back up that this is one of the key habits that separates the rich and the poor. In fact, a recent survey by Coupon Follow, for example, found that like 69% of millionaires ask for discounts when shopping, compared to only 41% of the general population, which I don't know about you, but that makes sense to me because when I had no money, I was so embarrassed that somebody would find out that I didn't have any money that I wanted to look like I had a lot of money. And so I would never ask for a discount because I was kind of taught that that would make you look poor. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Even though you would think it would be the other way around, right? So why are the richest people the ones negotiating the most, and how does this make you even richer? Well, it comes back to the fact that rich people think differently. So if you force yourself to negotiate something each day, it's a way of telling yourself that you are never truly rich. And as a result, you never become complacent with your money. This mindset will trickle throughout each part of your life, compounding to a significant impact on your bank account. Thomas Stanley wrote this book called The Millionaire Mind, and he talked about it was a skill that 94% of millionaires put as one of the most important skills to building wealth, which is true. That's why I teach people deal making at Contrarian Thinking and Contrarian Community. It's why I think you should learn how to buy a business even if you're not going to buy one, because it is the key to building wealth. The first time will feel uncomfortable, but then the next time you're buying something, trust me, and ask if you can have a discount. You just might get it. I do think that everything that you want is on the other side of fear, and this is a perfect example of that. Habit 2, I call increasing your urgency to action. This is the habit of decreasing the amount of time from you having an idea to actually doing it. Fascinating, but the top 1% nearly all share the same understanding that the greatest muscle you can build is urgency. How?
You shrink your timelines.
So, for instance, I've become friends with a guy by the name of Bill Perkins. We've invested a bunch of deals together. He wrote a book called Die with Zero. Big hedge fund manager, manages a couple $2 billion in his hedge fund. And I remember Bill, when I asked him once on a walk with him, I'm like, why do you think that you've been so successful in so many different ways? Like, you have a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund. You and I have both done a couple of deals that, are worth 8 or 9 figures. Why do you keep winning? And he thought about it for a second, and he's like, I don't think I'm smarter than anybody else. I move faster than anybody else. By the time somebody has an idea, I have already taken action, done the thing, made 3 mistakes, and found a better way. And he goes, these people, even if they're smarter and richer, they can't compete with my speed because I learn so much faster than they do by taking action. One of the key things I'm always saying to the executives on my team and in our portfolio is that your bank account is a direct reflection of how fast you move. And that the faster you move, the more money you will make. So when you say next quarter, push for 60 days. When you say next month I'm going to do this, push for 2 weeks. When you say next week, push instead for 24 hours. Not everything will get done on the new timeline, but you'll build this habit that will make you more successful than other people. Another thing to note is if you actually run a company or you have anybody that reports into you, You will always be the fastest one at your company, and the company will always be constrained by the speed of the CEO. If you are slow, expect your employees to be slower. If you are slow, you can't expect your friends to be faster than you. You are the barrier, and the faster you are and the higher you can move your bar, the more money you can make. We have something at my companies at Contrarian Thinking called the 24-hour rule. So you know how it's become really normal when you're at a company and they go, hey, let's circle up on that next week. Oh, let's talk about that on the next meeting. I hate that. I hate it so much. So instead, I always say, every time you think 1 week, instead replace it with 24 hours. Where did we come up with this idea that 1 week is reasonable? Instead, I say, let's circle back on that in 24 hours. Let's circle back on that tomorrow. So if all we do is we are 6 days faster than the average company, which is circling up on things every week, we probably win. Now, there's downsides to this, for instance, which means you're gonna make more mistakes, you're gonna have more margin of error, and I can tell you when it's gone sideways, is when I don't have somebody else, so like in my instance, my husband, your partner, your girlfriend, boyfriend, who is a little bit more detail-oriented. He's all risk-focused, I am all revenue-focused. And so it's nice to have a collar on it. That's why a lot of times in businesses, you see there's a CEO who's like, vision, fast, forward, big risks, and like a COO, a chief operating officer, or a chief financial officer, who's what's called your caller. They're the person that's like, well, that's gonna cost us a lot of money, or how exactly are we gonna implement that? So it makes a huge difference if you can be the speed, and then you can build the car while you're driving it. Habit 3 is surround yourself with other winners. I think this seems obvious, but people don't do it. Make a habit of hanging out with people even more successful than you. You don't need more friends, you need allies, and you need people to look up to. Most friends tell you, it's okay, slow down, we miss you. Allies tell you, keep going, you got this. You didn't sign up for small. If we get into the data on it, 79% of wealthy people network for at least 5 hours each month. They probably don't call it networking because that's gross, but that means that they are out there actively, whether it's on the golf course, whether it's in meetups, whether it's at hotel lobbies, whether it's for lunch. They're engaging with new people often, whereas only 16% of the poorer population engage in networking activities at all. They're just focused heads down on their work. I've found the cliche that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with to be really, really true. So my favorite example of this is the PayPal Mafia. It's this small group of friends that created PayPal. They went on to also create Tesla, SpaceX, LinkedIn, YouTube, Yelp, Palantir. I know a bunch of the guys. Joe Lonsdale, also part of that group, founder of Palantir, was a guest on our podcast. If you want to go listen to that on the Big Deal podcast. Billionaire. Not a billionaire once over, he started $8 billion companies. So a list of companies with a combined value of over $1 trillion came from a group of less than 20 dudes. And what I think is interesting about this is there's a lot of reasons why people give this hate. They're like, well, that's awful, those people are just rich, elite, whatever. They didn't start off that way. If you hung out with a lot of these guys, you would be like, oh, they were probably nerds in high school. But then they just really focused and they got around with a group of other people that were hardcore focusing too. There's a guy by the name of Sam Parr who started a company called The Hustle. And I wanted to understand what media was about, so I reached out to Sam. And over the years, I kind of stayed in touch with him via email. I remember at the time he was super into Butterfingers, I think. I don't know, Sam, you could tell me what it was.
Codie sent me literally 50 Butterfingers.
And so I found that out somehow, and I sent him this like giant box of Butterfingers, like obnoxious sized box of Butterfingers to his office with a note basically saying, love what you guys have been doing. I've been learning a little bit about media, like keep up the good work. Here's my contact information. And he reached out and was like, that's cool. And you're weird. Why are you sending me this? And we started striking up a conversation after that. And so I stayed in touch with him for years. And Sam has helped me, like he gave me the playbook to first start a newsletter business. He and I go back and forth on our podcasts all the time. You know, I've been on a bunch of his stuff. He's been on mine. And that all started from a box of Butterfingers that probably cost me $30. So my advice here is that you should try to get around people that either have the life that you want or have skills you want to learn. I think that staying in your hometown, in your same peer group, is likely keeping you poor. In fact, we did an entire podcast around it and the data seems to match that you should never be afraid to leave your hometown to grow because it's too easy to stay the same when the scene does. You know, your people love you as you are now. They'll fear losing that you. So your hometown is always going to be there. So will your friends. But if you truly want to change, you need to get to a place that is changed. It's one of the most direct correlations to how much you earn. The study followed kids from families with the same amount of money, similar amounts of money, and they documented how much they went on to earn as adults. It was two groups. They had one key difference between them. One group were families that lived in towns that had rich and poor people in them in higher numbers, versus the other town where everyone had a lower income. So the families had the same lower income level, but it was one group had a bunch of other rich families just around them, and one had a bunch of other families that had the same income level around them. Turns out the kids who grew up in the neighborhood where they had few rich people, and they even interacted with less, went on to earn less money, and the ones who had rich people went on to earn more, even if there were just a few more rich people. What's wild is how much more they made. On average, these guys, their income was 33% higher by the age of 35. That is crazy. And it's something called economic interconnectedness, which basically means the more you can have people from different social groups and social income levels overlap. I think the good part here is the socioeconomic status of your family and you is not the only indicator of your future income. It's instead, how can I get more economic connectedness? How can I get in front of other people? Put bluntly, it measures how many rich people and poor people are friends. So when an area has higher economic connectedness, poor kids are much more likely to turn out richer as adults. So if you're going to make more money, be very careful where you are and who you surround yourself with. All right, habit 4. If you are going to consume information, data studying the richest people in the world says you want it to be books, but not just any books. 88% of the wealthiest people spend at least 30 minutes a day, every day, reading for education or self-improvement. I can say that I've done that for a long time. Maybe 60-ish% listen to audiobooks during their commute. My tip is, I wish I had started earlier reading the biographies of billionaires. They can be overlooked because they read sometimes like novels, like they're fascinating, but they are the very blueprints on how to get rich. So you steal their homework. You know, you could start with one of these, Built from Scratch, which was about the Home Depot founders. Poor Charlie's Almanac, that's about Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner. The Ride of a Lifetime, that's Disney, Bob Iger. Steve Jobs, that's the biography of Steve Jobs. Elon Musk, same. Those are both by Walter Isaacson, one of the best biographers of our time. Made in America, all-time favorite of mine. I definitely think you should listen to it. It's by Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, and Am I Being Too Subtle by my favorite investor of all time, whose name is Sam Zell. So I basically knew I wanted to build a billion-dollar company, and I want to be worth multiple $1 billion. And so who do I read? I read billion-dollar company founder books, and I read billion-dollar investor books. I copy the top 1%, and then turn your commute from dead time into a time to get ahead. Also, you guys should buy my book, which is Main Street Millionaire. It's coming out right now, and it opens with a story of a billionaire that I wish somebody had told me, because he started out driving a garbage truck and became one of the richest men in the world from nothing. He was a f***up. He drank too much. I think he even got kicked out of the army, and he turned that into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise and also ended up owning a bunch of sports companies. It's a wild story, and the whole book is about how everyday humans can become their version of a Main Street millionaire too, so you should read it. Check it out at msmbook.com, or actually if you click below, here somewhere on YouTube, there's actually a little book thing. You guys see that? Comment below if you do. And if you go on there, oh, do me a huge solid too. Buy the book, but go buy it from like Barnes & Noble or somewhere else, because apparently that counts more for us to get credit for the New York Times list, which we're shooting for. So do your girl a solid. So the first book that I read that shifted my world upside down isn't on this list, but it is another billionaire book, and it was called The Adventure Capitalist. And this was back in the day. I don't know if you guys know, I used to run $1 billion in assets under management fund group in Latin America. I was in finance, but I hated it. And I didn't want to work in New York anymore, and I really wanted to spend time in Latin America. My family is Latino, so I thought that'd be cool, and I love Latin America. And I couldn't really kind of figure out how to marry the two. I knew how to do finance and invest, but I wanted to get out of the US for a while. I wanted to live abroad, but I wanted to make like multiple 6 figures or 7 figures while doing it. I didn't want to be those nomads living in like a hostel or something. That's not for your girl. She's fancy. So anyway, I found this book. I stumbled upon it. And I had a picture of this guy on a yellow convertible lifted Mercedes, weirdest thing ever. And basically he drove around the world on this thing from like Africa, I think, all the way to China, and invested in third world countries in deals he found. And what's fascinating is this is a guy by the name of Jim Rogers. Woo, thank you. He was the partner to George Soros for Soros's first fund. Don't hate him too much for that. I know George Soros, not our favorite human. He was one of the best hedge fund managers of all time, and then he quit to go travel the globe. And I got to know Jim over the years. He now lives in China, but incredible story. Also, what the is this vehicle? Incredible story. Changed my worldview because it reminded me, man, could you live an adventure-filled, incredible life and make billies? Answer, yes. Habit 5, to-do list. Do the thing you want to do least first. The thing that you will want to do the least, that thing that you haven't been doing, is the thing getting in the way of everything you want out of life. There's fascinating research on this, which is about 81% of wealthy people have a to-do list compared to only 19% of poor people. How wild is that? 80% of the wealthy are focused on accomplishing one single goal or 3 to 5 top goals compared to only 12% of poorer section of society, which have a lot of things on there. You know, one of my good friends is Jay Papasan and Gary Keller. Gary Keller started Keller Williams, the biggest real estate franchisor, I think, in the world. And they wrote a book called The One Thing. Let me give it to you in one sentence. Focus on less things. I don't think you need to read the whole book for that. But essentially, instead of having a to-do list that looks like Santa's naughty list, you know, at the end of the year, the goal is that you have one thing on it each day, where if you accomplish that one thing, everything else in your day either gets easier or irrelevant. So that is what I have on my calendar every day. I am literally not allowed to go to sleep until I finish my one thing. Now, I have a lot of other things on the list that don't always get done, for sure, but that one thing, I am in a marriage contract with it. It gets done every single day. And because of that, my life changes. So you make sure to get everything on it done? No, your one thing done. And the next question is usually, how do you figure out what's actually important on your to-do list? How do you figure out the one thing? And there are a couple ways to do it. One is you ask yourself, what on this list, if I do it, makes everything else easier? Then you ask yourself, what on this list, if I do it, other things become unnecessary to do on my list? And that might be something like, for instance, if I hired a new video editor, then all of these tasks that are me editing videos, uploading videos, color grading videos, etc., don't have to get done. Okay, I should probably hire this person. If on the list is like, close one sale today, well, if I close one sale today and I make $1,000, then I can use that $1,000 to hire a VA for the month who will get rid of the rest of the 20 tasks. That's how you think about your one thing. Where is there an unlock so big that you are like a guy with a lever and a fulcrum, you can lift things way above your pay grade? Habit 6, saving. Perhaps most important of all, get in the habit of saving. Now, it's not more important than earning, but when you get in the habit of saving, the game changes. Sounds obvious, but perhaps the biggest determinant of those who create wealth and those always stuck chasing their next paycheck is the ability to refrain from spending everything you earn. Whether you earn a little or a lot, you'll never be wealthy if your lifestyle matches your paycheck. The sad truth about this is 94% of wealthy people save 20% or more of their income. Wow. Only 5% of poor people do the same. At which point you're like, no f***ing kidding, Codie, that's because you guys have more money, and when you were poor, you didn't save any either. But let me show you why this is so powerful to start pondering. See, there's this magic word called compounding. And what that means is that with every dollar you save and you reinvest either into your business or into an investment, that starts to grow over time until the point at which your money can work harder and faster and longer than you, because it doesn't need to sleep. It can go out and it can bring friends back. So how do you build this habit? Well, I do a couple things, even though I make a lot of money now. I automatically put money in saving accounts so that I can never even touch it. It goes directly from the money that comes into me via my paycheck, let's say, and directly into things like Wealthfront. It goes directly into things like my Morgan Stanley account. I never even touch it. The second is I never buy to impress. If you guys follow me on Instagram, I have like new outfits a lot. But this one, for instance, I think I'm a sucker for an Instagram buy. It's not Chanel. You've never once seen me post a fancy piece of clothing, maybe like a purse or shoes, but like a Chanel jacket. I die on the inside. I mean, you guys, I have a portfolio of 9-figure businesses We have more money than we know what to do with in some ways. There's no fancy rings on here. Look at the size of my wedding ring. This thing's tiny. There's no fancy clothes on here with logos all over them. You've never seen me post something with a fancy car. Maybe sometimes I'm flying somewhere nice, I'm staying somewhere nice, our office is nice, I have a lot of employees that's nice, but I never buy to impress. I want to look nice, but I don't want to be stupid with my money. And I think these days a lot of people are stupid with their money. So that's the second rule. The third rule and habit for how you make sure that you save, you reward yourself for the action you don't want to take. So for instance, if I was trying to save more in my business, I would, one, put more attention to it. So right now in my business, for instance, I want us to increase our profit margin, which means I want us to increase how much money we take home every single month in this business. So what do? I track every single day what my bank account is. Do we have more money in it than yesterday? That makes it very easy. It also makes it top of mind because where attention goes, energy flows. The second thing that I do, if I really want to increase my savings overall, is that I reward myself when I hit a goal. So I might say, all right, I want to save another $1,000 a month this month. When I hit that $1,000, I will reward myself with something. Maybe I want to buy a new book, maybe I want to buy a new shirt, maybe I want to go out on a date night, maybe I want to take a day off work, but I am not allowed to do it, or I'm not allowed to watch the Netflix movie I want to watch, or I'm not allowed to make the phone call I want to make until I hit that goal. And then I start to get into a reward cycle where it's like, I'm getting competitive with myself. Now the hard truth here is, I don't care how many Starbucks lattes you skip, you're never going to save your way to rich. The way that you become really rich is you earn. So we have to just make sure you learn how to not continue to spend more just because you make more, and then you also learn how to earn more. There's tons of videos on my channel about earning more. I think you should go back and watch this one too. Habit 7, create always better than consume. So when you wake up, this is hard. No social media, email, or texting. Instead, write something. Create something before you get sucked in. As a general rule to remember, the wealthiest people tend to spend more time creating rather than consuming. And this stat is demonstrative of this. For instance, 67% of the wealthiest people in the world watch 1 hour or less of TV daily. We have one TV in my entire house with me and my husband. I don't think we watch it more than maybe once a week, while 77% of those struggling financially spend an hour or more watching TV a day. Which also makes sense because in some ways you want to get away from it all, right? But maybe you could train your brain to do something a little bit different. The second that you want to turn on the TV, why don't you read a fiction book instead and take a few notes on like ideas that are sparked from the fiction book. And then when the fiction book is really palpable and you end up loving that and you're like me, you're super into dragons. I don't know if we have any other Sarah Maas fans out there, sort of embarrassing, but I am into it. Then we get past that, then we might insert a self-help book and we might start liking reading a self-help book at the end of the day. And instead of watching trashy Netflix, we went from then having a fiction book to read to then having a self-help book to read. And then finally, we actually might want to work on our side project at night. We might have so much energy from weaning ourselves off of like the Coca-Cola, the soda, the processed food, all the way to something healthy that we realize we have more energy than we thought we have, and we don't need to escape our lives. We just want to do something different in our life. That took me a while to understand, but now I do it every single day. All right, let's talk some tools here. So what tools do you use to limit social media? First of all, I track on my phone how many hours I use a day. I get a notification. That notification has a goal associated with it on Apple. You can set that for yourself. If I'm over in the red, I know I can't be on it anymore. Second, we have a thing that shuts off our Wi-Fi at night. So after 10 o'clock at night, we can no longer be on phones because sometimes you're like laying in bed and you're just like this. And now I can't do that because my Wi-Fi is off and it's cold in my house and I don't want to get up and get out of bed. You like make your primordial mind not be able to do it easily. The second is accountability partner. My husband is actually he's the phone Nazi in the family. And so when I get up in the morning and I immediately just want to face dive into TikTok nonsense, he instead tells me no. And he talks shit to me or he whaps it out of my hand and then I go on the cold plunge or do something else in the morning. And then finally what ends up happening is like after a while of doing that, I like the cold plunge. So I get up in the morning. Also like, I don't know, if you have a person, it's pretty nice to get up and like snuggle them in the morning instead of immediately go into TikTok. Like you forget that your brain actually really benefits you when you do things like human touch, when you get outside, even if it's cold. So those are the couple things that I do to help myself. Listen, I'm not perfect. You don't have to be either, but that is certainly one of them. The other thing that I thought about that a bunch of you people asked, What easy hacks have you found to help you get in the zone to create as opposed to consume? I believe the muse doesn't come to boring people. Like, if you think about it, if you're like, what is the muse? The muse is like this source of inspiration. It's like this like, beautiful entity that like comes down to man and inspires us to write plays and scripts and make money and do whatever. And if I was that bitch, I wouldn't hang out with you if you were like at your cubicle all day, staring at the screen, like eating a McDonald's. Like, I'd be like, inspire me right back. Give me a little mood music, maybe light a candle. That's what I do. I'm a little hippie now. I get my Palo Santo stick. I light that bad boy and I start writing. And like, it's sort of amazing what music, the right lighting, and a candle will do. And all of that, I think, costs you less than $10. One of the best ways to get inspired and to create more is to read inspiring shit. This is a guy that I've come to know named Jonah Goldberg. And every time I read his stuff, it's just beautiful. Like, he's talking about some pretty heavy stuff here, like populism, nationalism, and the destruction of America. So it's not like light reading, but it's just beautifully written. And so I'll read a few pages of his stuff and it'll spark something in my brain and then I'll come up with my own idea. I think one of the worst things you can do if you want to create is like you sit and you think about the problems. I was talking to this with one of our writers the other day on my team, Jacob. Jacob, like, here's what's wrong with this and here's what's wrong with this. And I was like, stop. I was like, you are in problem mode, you are not in creation mode. You cannot create from this source of like pain and frustration. You need to create from a source of inspiration. So instead of you being mad about what's not working, go read the people that you love. Go watch or listen to music that you love, that you find inspiring. And at the moment in which you have your own independent thought, you push it away and you go create. And that is how I think you develop a creator mindset versus a consumer mindset. You only use other people's creations to spark your own creations. And that's the difference between somebody who consumes and somebody who does. Habit 8, fitness. All right, quite honestly, a daily walk. I think it's as simple as that. The wealthiest people sort of recognize the importance of making a habit of physical movement every day. These guys might not be the fittest in the gym with six packs. I mean, have you seen some of them? But they're very aware that how your brain functions is intrinsically linked to your physical health. That's why Steve Jobs was famous for doing long walks. He would do walk and talks instead of meetings. That is why, for instance, Brian Johnson, founder of Braintree, obsesses on his body overall. That's why, for instance, even the smartest minds out there won't do their thinking immediately after eating a big, heavy meal. So it's probably no coincidence that something like 76% of the wealthiest people exercise at least 4 days a week, compared to only 23% of the poorest population. Again, you have more time when you're wealthy than when you're poor. Maybe. Or maybe you just prioritize differently. Now, I'm sure you've heard the phrase, healthy body, healthy mind. My phrase is, civilize the mind, make savage the body. I don't think it has to be intense, but it has to be consistent. And I always think in my mind this quote from my husband, Chris, because he's an animal, that you were given this kind of work of art, this piece of clay to mold, and you have one shot on earth, theoretically. So what would it be like to wring every bit of capability out of you that humanly could exist? What would it be like to be the fittest you could humanly be, to be the richest you could humanly be, to be the best human, to give back more than anybody else? What would that look like for you to become like the little version of Michelangelo out of the marble? And I think a lot of people will say, well, I don't have time to work out, so how do I fit it in my schedule? And that is true. I feel that many days. A couple hacks. One, what gets planned gets prioritized. So put it on your calendar. Every single time I don't do this consistently, I don't work out as much. So now, when you look at my personal calendar, you see a gym spot on there. What gets measured gets managed. Famous Peter Drucker quote. I use an app called Streaks. Every single day, it rewards me with this little gamification to say, Codie, good job, bitch, you got to the gym. I also remind myself of this one line, which is choose your hard. Being fat is hard, being fit is hard. Being broke is hard, being rich is hard. Being married is hard, being single is hard, choose your hard. It is actually just as hard to be fat as it is to be fit. It feels terrible. You don't have the same amount of sex, you don't have the same amount of partners, you even make less money in many ways because of the attractiveness privilege. And so being fit is really important. And the reason why goes back to like our little lion gorilla brains on the savannah, which is we were looking for indicators of health to see who we should mate with. And so we can't get rid of that lizard brain of ours that's telling us this person doesn't look healthy, and so I don't want to prioritize them. Now, I'm no fitness guru and I don't pretend to be, but where should people start with their fitness journey? Sometimes people ask, and I say, hey, here's my lazy girl guide to fitness. The lazy girl guide to fitness is 10,000 steps a day. I track that shit on my phone. I get a little reward if I get it every single day. I bought a $200 treadmill desky thing that I am installing upstairs in my office that I'm going to walk on because now I work a lot and I do these Zoom meetings and I want to get my 10,000 steps in. Second is I do a cold plunge. Maybe those are expensive. That's not achievable for everybody, but the cost keeps coming down on those bad boys, so keep your eyes out. And then the third thing I do is I lift weights. And I only lift weights 3 or 4 days a week. I go kind of hard. I use this app called Ladder. I'm also an investor in it, just as an FYI. But they do the whole training regime for me because even though I work out quite a bit, I still don't know all the moves. I don't come up with my own programming. Ladder does it all for me. That's the Lazy Girl Guide to Fitness. And then habit 9, wake up time. Tough truth, I found that waking up at 5:45 solves like 99.9% of my daily issues. The earlier I rise to a degree, the more I get done in a day. So it's kind of no surprise that data directly correlates with waking up early with being wealthy. And I think it's for a couple reasons. It's not just that you're getting up early, it's that you're not staying up late. At the end of the day, you can make poor decisions, aka eating, drinking, staying out too late. You're probably not gonna be drinking at 5:45 a.m. So you just like shift your day to, like mama said, nothing good happens after midnight, And before some of you say that it's not possible for you to wake up at 5:45 with your particular job, that's okay, because the data shows it doesn't necessarily matter the time, but 44% of wealthy individuals wake up 3 hours before their workday begins. So whenever that is, compared to only 3% of those in lower income brackets. So whether your day starts at 9 a.m., 9 p.m., or any other time around the clock, if you want to adopt the habits of the richest 1%, you carve out a little time between waking up and going to work. 3 hours may be a lot, but carve some for you. A lot of times people will say, well, tell us how you actually personally made a habit of waking up early and how it's impacted your life. Let me tell you the next hack, which is marry somebody better than you. Date somebody better than you. Get in a habit with your partner to have accountability. Get with a friend and both of you guys schedule a 6 a.m. yoga class together, a 6:30 a.m. yoga class together. I don't have a lot of individual willpower for fitness. It's not my superhero trait. So I bring somebody along for the ride so that they can help keep me honest. And now the other thing to say is, what if I'm a night owl? Should I feel bad about not waking up early? No, but also this 2017 Harvard study found that it's even more important to impacting your success than a specific wake-up time is consistency. So if you're not waking up early every day, at least wake up at the same time every day this month if you can, ideally weekends included, and it turns out you might become more productive. If you guys liked this video though, make sure to subscribe and comment below which one you think you're gonna do. I'll help you hold you guys accountable. The reason that we do all of these videos, why would I do YouTube if I have a 9-figure portfolio, if we have all these companies, if we've built all these things? It's because I don't like what I see in the world around me, and I think we have a moral obligation when we have achieved a few things to share with other people how to do it. And so if nobody does any action, then this is all useless, and I might as well be talking to myself in my mirror and just like focus on my own six-pack. But if you guys make a real difference in your life, then this is all worth it to me. So thanks for being along in the ride, and tell me in the comments what you thought about this video.
Thanks for watching, guys. If you haven't, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We just did this crazy analytics where we saw the percentage that's subscribed versus the people who keep coming back. Spoiler, a bunch of you guys are missing out. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and you guys can actually get a bunch of numbers and math to help make you money instead of a bunch of nonsense and news.